Hey, what's up? It's Phoenix. So I've been thinking about how much the world feels chaotic and doesn't make sense. How much it seems to constantly disorient and never make sense. I remember when I was in the hospital for the first time, and I remember the staff saying, "Oh, he's just disoriented." And I thought it was interesting because that's the way that I felt, but it was used as a description of my whole demeanor and was utilized as part of my diagnosis. And I thought it was interesting because it was terrifying to think that I really was disoriented. And I would say that when it comes to these things that are almost pushed on us from a confusing and crazy society, that it seems as though I do experience a lot of disorientation all the time. And maybe it doesn't seem as scary or threatening to me because I've lived it for so long. And maybe it's one of the reasons why I have trouble connecting with other people, because they can't relate to the states of mind that I'm communicating. But the disorientation is chaotic, and I think it's actually kind of poetic in a lot of ways. And maybe it's more than just the diagnosis of disoriented or manic or schizophrenic. Maybe it goes deeper to something that I think is actually fundamental about the way that the world is and about things about the world. And that's what makes it super interesting to me, is that I kind of want to dissect and diagnose this disorientation. The fact that I like certain types of music because of the way in which it makes me allows me to tap into that disorientation, because I can explain it. And isn't that the interesting thing, is that with disorientation, we try to label things, and that with the disorientation, we try to order it and categorize it. And maybe that's the whole point, is that we can't. I keep thinking of all these times that I've struggled in psychosis, and all of these times that I've struggled with my mood and anxiety, this existential dread at the way that things are and the way that I can't make sense of what's going on around me, and the way in which I can be afraid, and the way in which that fear takes over. While it seems everybody else is living very balanced lives without being in such a crazy, crazy place. And crazy is an unfortunate word choice, because I don't mean it in the context of mental illness, even though I am talking about the disorientation that comes from having my mental health diagnosis. But it seems to me that that's what's so crazy about it, is that it's this mad world that doesn't make sense. But like I said, I feel like it's embedded in the very nature of the universe. I feel as though maybe the true state of the universe is, if not malevolent, it is at least chaotic. It is at least impersonal. And that can be an interesting place to be. And I think what matters with that is that I know there's a lot of reasons why I would think this way, and I know there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I feel like this idea of disorientation is something that I don't see talked about a lot, and that does seem somewhat unique to me, because I'm not so sure that people experience such chaos, such an internal chaos of that fear and the ideas that come to your mind that make no sense, and the ideas that you can't parse and that you can't categorize. And that's what's so interesting, is I try in my writing, ironically, to try to categorize it and order it. But maybe it's one of those things where disorder really is all that there is, this kind of chaotic disorder. And maybe I can really follow my advice, which is that I think the whole point of writing, for me at least, is to be aware of that chaos, to be aware of that disorientation, because I think it's super interesting to think about, and even super interesting to experience, even though it can be a terrifying place. And so I would follow my own advice and say that I think it's one of those things where I do want to pay attention to that, and I do want to try to make sense of it anyway, and be able to live in that world and acknowledge that it's there. Because even if it's all happening in my mind, that's very much still an experience to be understood by at least the person undergoing it, which in this case would be me. And so when I think of that psych tech that said I was just disoriented, they had no idea what was going on in my mind. And I'm not really sure that even I understand what's going on in my mind. I'm not even sure that I grasp the significance of the things that I experience. But I think disorientation is a powerful concept because it captures what it feels like all the time. It captures this chaos and this confusion, all of these things that I'm never able to figure out. And maybe that's partly what makes it so interesting to me, is that even though I'm both terrified by the world and terrified by what I deem to be a malevolent universe. I still find it to where I'm curious about it because I want to understand. And that desire to understand, to be a writer, to document these things is part of my approach. Because yes, I document other things such as my philosophical ideas or philosophical ideas in general. I categorize my stories and the stories that are happening around me. But maybe that's an added piece to it, is that I'm also trying to categorize the energy that I feel so much around me that I can't describe, but that I feel is there, and I don't feel is just some conception in my mind, that it isn't just some disorientation that someone feels. Now, I don't want to leave it open-ended in a sense, because some people would blame me and assume that that's all that I experience, and that it would be my responsibility to overcome the disorientation. But that's actually the whole point, is I do feel like regardless of the source of it, I do want to overcome it, because I think that it's something that's fascinating and something that's worth trying to understand. And I love that that's a possibility, because I think there's something to be found in that disorientation, something that is a diamond in the rough, something that's worth paying attention to. And I think it comes from everywhere and from everything. And that's a fascinating place to be, even if it doesn't always make sense. It's the fact that it's keeping that wildness there, and that you don't have to tame it, that you can let it be what it is. And that's what I would say is like the irony of all of this, is that I seem to take the Buddhist principle that I actually am calm. I'm calm amidst all of the chaos. I'm calm amidst that storm. And maybe that sounds good on paper, but I think it actually is true for me, because I realize like I'm actually okay. I'm actually calm through it, surprisingly, because I realize that it's a part of the world, that it isn't just a part of my psyche. And it makes it to where I realize that I want to explore it because I'm so curious about it, and because I'm trying to figure it out, and because I think that it can be an amazing thing, and I think that it's something that's worth considering. And so even though I can't always make sense of it, I see it as something that's important to be aware of. I see it as something that's important to think about. And maybe the irony of all of it is, with the sheer terror and the sheer fear, I'm actually not afraid of it, because it's been so much a part of my existence for so long that I wouldn't think that it's something that I would ever lose sight of. And that's actually a pretty deep place to be for me, because there's acceptance there. And I can be okay with it, like I said, and be calm amidst the storm. And I think there's ironically hope that comes from a chaotic universe. And I actually find a lot of interesting ideas to explore with that. So yeah, I'm Phoenix. I hope you'll check out my books. I hope you'll check out my other videos. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon.